It's a time, couple of emails then on with our conversation. Alex in Chelmsford, let's be honest about this trust. She's giving out help the worst possible way to everyone and paying for it the worst possible way, the public rather than ultra-wealth companies. Meanwhile, Ashley in Beaconsfield says windfall tax would be exactly the wrong way to deal with it. When will the left understand? Nobody wants more taxes. There's a recession looming. More taxes is moronic for businesses. Businesses will leave if they are taxed more. Let's get behind this and stand with her on these caps. Well, let's put some of those points to Chief Secretary of the Treasury, Simon Clarke, who joins me a second time this week. I think I've spoken to you more than I have my children, so it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you back, Mr. Clarke. What can you tell us about the plans, and why would it appear that the administration in which you serve is against the idea of some form of increase in windfall tax? Good morning.
Well, good morning, Nick, and thanks for the chance to explain a bit about this. Obviously, should begin by saying I can't comment on the details of what the government's going to announce today, but I can comment on why it is that we're taking action on the rising cost of energy, and that's because, as we know, Putin has been weaponising energy in an attempt to break the resolve of the West in terms of defending Ukraine, and the massive increases in the cost of gas that we've been seeing are driven by a conscious effort on his part to make the situation unbearable. There is no question that what is set to come into effect in October and early next year, if we don't act, is not sustainable. And that's why the Prime Minister today will be setting out what is a lasting solution to this, because we've had many months where we've attempted to deal with this in bite-sized chunks, if you like, and that can't continue. We need to provide a solution that gives both comfort but also clarity about how we're going to deal with events over the course of the months and potentially a year or two ahead when gas prices remain very high. We're going to be acting in a way which I think will address this decisively and doing so in a way which is fair. And we can talk much more about how the way this is funded,
okay.
but the key principle here is that we cannot tax our way to the investment that we need to see in energy self-sufficiency in the North Sea. And that is at the heart of the Prime Minister's, if you like, economic framework for this decision.
Your point about Putin's war in Ukraine is well made, but I refer you again to the idea of windfall tax. These are businesses that, I just remind you, you'll have these figures to hand, but it has been reported Treasury figures say they will make something in the region of £170 billion over 2 years. We have the bosses of one particular company, BP, saying it's a bit like a cash machine and we can't get out of the way of the cash. Why, Mr. Clarke? Why would you not look at some way of taking some money, some financial aid from those firms?
Well, the first thing to say is that these firms are the people we're going to be absolutely relying on to deliver that next generation of North Sea oil and gas extraction on the route to energy self-sufficiency. And North Sea gas extraction is up by 26% by comparison to this time last year. That's great, but we need to go much, much further in getting new fields online. That is why we need these companies to be ploughing that investment into the North Sea. We cannot do what Labour would do, which is just tax. It's worth remembering, by way of context, that if you're an oil and gas extractor, you already pay more than double the main rate of corporation tax. You pay 40p in the pound compared to 19p for ordinary companies. In addition to that, we've already imposed a windfall tax with a clear incentive through the allowances to get more investment into the North Sea. So there's a windfall tax already on top of a higher underlying rate of tax. It's not as though these companies aren't paying their fair share. And if they're making large profits, then they're also going to be paying huge sums of tax into the exchequer already. That's obviously how the tax system works.
All right, apologies, I misspoke. Of course, since we last spoke, you've been promoted. Congratulations. You are now Levelling Up Housing and Communities Secretary, so congratulations on that. I hope you weren't too unnerved by Peter Bottomley's question about housing, which, of course, if you were the person last time we asked that, the person lasted 15 minutes, I recall, Mr. Clarke.
The reality is that, as Liz Truss set out in PMQs yesterday, we need to move away from the culture of top-down housing targets, which have done so much to poison the relationship between individual communities and government on the question of how we build the houses that we need. We absolutely need, as a country, to build more homes. So there can be no question about that. The very high house prices that we see, not just in London and the South East, but in many major cities, are totally unfair, and they're shutting a generation of young people out of the chance to own their own home in a way which, frankly, is a national scandal that needs to be addressed. But we can't also be hammering communities with these targets in a way which as I say, leads to a very adversarial relationship from the get-go. We need to create some rational incentives to deliver the housing that we need where we need it. I'm going to be saying a lot more about that in the course of the weeks ahead. It's a priority for government, but so is also, candidly, providing reassurances for the communities like the ones referenced by Sir Peter about how we're going to do that and the protections that are going to be in place for them too.
Can we come back to energy provision? When do you imagine the first fracking wells will be drilled, Secretary of State?
The Prime Minister will be saying a lot more about this later this morning. But to be clear, consent lies at the heart of the energy policies that we're going to be setting out. We need to become more self-sufficient in energy, and whether that be through more renewables or through more gas extraction, we absolutely need the consent of communities before we can proceed. Because, again, as with housing, if you don't have that, then you end up in a very poisonous dynamic very quickly. So we are totally committed to our net zero target by 2050. How we use gas as a transition fuel to get there has obviously never been more important because of what Putin's doing. The PM will be addressing that in her statement.
Although, of course, the manifesto said there would not be fracking. Fracking would be banned. So that's a pledge broken, isn't it?
Well, let's see what the Prime Minister says at 11. But, when we were drawing up that manifesto...
Well, your colleague, Mr Rees-Mogg, is rather keen on fracking, isn't he?
Well, Jacob has always been a very powerful advocate for more gas extraction, but it is absolutely the case that he's also committed to our net zero commitment by 2050, as we all are. That sits at the heart of government action in this space. I think that what the Prime Minister is going to set out is very fair. As I say, it has consent at its heart, and we have literally a matter of about 3 hours before we hear more about it.
And finally, as Secretary of State for Levelling Up, what do you hope you can achieve in the 2 and something years that you are in position for the people of Middlesbrough South and East Cleveland and Redcar and Sedgefield and else to actually show real progress in levelling up? There is a sense, and I was at the hustings in Leeds, as you might have known, the first one that they did, there is a sense it was all talk, Secretary of State, and no do.
Well, if that's the perception, then it's our job to counter it. But on Teesside, that is not the case, because we've got our new Freeport, which is now live, and there's the new. Nick, if you ever want to come up to visit the Teesworks site in Redcar, which is the former SSI steelworks site, I can take you there with our Mayor Ben Houchin and show you what is genuine. It's genuinely transformational what's going on there. Thousands of jobs being created. The largest regeneration site in the whole of Europe. It's bigger than Gibraltar. And that is the kind of project we need to see so much more of across the whole of the country, because levelling up is something which is, there is both a moral and an economic imperative behind it. We need to make sure that the Manchesters, the Liverpools, the Leeds, and all the towns of the North and the Midlands are pulling their weight and offering good opportunities to their citizens, because that's why people in places like mine put their trust in Boris Johnson's Conservatives. That's something Liz Truss is absolutely determined we will double down on. There's going to be some really exciting announcements in this space in the course of September. So without getting ahead of today's energy announcement, this government is hitting the ground running.
OK, I look forward to facilitating that trip. I would enjoy that very much. And congratulations again on your promotion. Levelling Up Housing and Communities Secretary Simon Clarke appearing here on LBC. 2 to 8 is the time. Appropriate, let's go to South Shields. Mohammed, you want to talk energy prices. Our grandchildren will pay, but not BP, Shell and others. Is that right? Good morning.
No, it's not right, Nick. Great show, by the way. I think these energy companies